The courthouse was too quiet. 5-year-old Emily Mason walked through the tall oak doors, her small hand clutching the thick leash of Rex, a German shepherd with a jagged scar across his ribs. Her steps were slow, almost uncertain. But she kept walking. Every eye turned to her. Reporters shifted in their seats. Lawyers paused mid-conversation. The jury stared. Judge Janet Holloway leaned forward on the bench. Her face was calm, but her fingers tapped once against her gavel. She'd seen many things in her 20 years as a federal judge, but never this. A child, a dog, and the weight of a criminal case resting on their presence alone. Emily said nothing. She hadn't spoken since the day in her backyard 3 months ago. The day a man tried to take her. The day her world fell silent. Across the room sat Lucas Braddock, 42. Ex-engineer. No criminal record, no red flags. But something about him felt wrong. He looked calm, almost bored. His hands were folded, his dark suit crisp. His eyes followed the child with just a flicker of something too cold to name. And then Emily paused, just before the witness stand. She looked up at the man in the defendant's chair. Her green eyes didn't blink. Her hand twitched, just once, barely visible to most, but not to Rex. The dog's entire body went rigid. His ears shot up. The leash strained in her hand as a low, guttural growl rose from deep within his chest. A sound that cut through the silence like a blade. Gasps broke out across the courtroom. A few jurors leaned back. The defense attorney shot up from his chair. "Your Honor," he started. "Quiet," Judge Holloway snapped. She was staring at the dog. Rex's eyes were locked on Lucas Braddock, not blinking, not moving. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was recognition. Emily's grip tightened on the leash. She didn't speak, but her fingers did something again. 2 subtle taps near the buckle. Another signal. Rex stepped forward. Not a leap, just one slow, deliberate step. His growl deepened. Holloway stood. "This court will take a recess," she said, her voice steel. 15 minutes, now!" Everyone scrambled. Attorneys whispered. Jurors rose. The bailiff stepped between Rex and the defense table, just in case. Emily didn't move. Neither did Rex. Outside the courtroom, in the hallway, Assistant DA Natalie Wren cornered Judge Holloway. "Did you see that?" she said. The judge nodded slowly. "He's not just a support dog," she said. "That wasn't conditioning. That was a reaction." Rex was now sitting beside Emily, who knelt and pressed her forehead against his shoulder. He didn't move, just let her lean. Detective Caleb Monroe stepped up beside them. Veteran FBI, 22 years of child crimes work. He'd seen dogs trained to detect everything from bombs to blood. But this? Something triggered him, Monroe said. That man's scent, his voice, something. "I've got a theory," Holloway muttered, "but it's going to piss off the defense." Inside the holding room, Lucas Braddock stood with his lawyer, Martin Drake. The calm was gone. "She recognized me," Braddock said. "What?" Drake frowned. "The dog. It recognized me. You said you'd never— I didn't think she'd remember," Braddock snapped. "Or that the mutt would. But that dog knows. He knows I was there." Drake paled. "You told me there was no direct contact." "There wasn't. Not really." "What does that mean, Lucas?" "I was careful," Braddock whispered. "I wore gloves. I didn't take her. I left before the cops arrived." "But the girl saw you." "No, she didn't scream. She didn't say anything, just stared. She hasn't talked since, remember? Then what are you worried about? The dog, Braddock muttered. I didn't plan for the damn dog. Outside, Judge Holloway turned to Monroe. Dig into that incident again, she said. Backyard, right? 2 months ago? 3, Monroe replied. Austin, gated community, no security cameras. Family? Father's a software consultant, mom's a freelance editor. No enemies, no debts. What about neighbors? One witness, elderly woman. She saw a black van and a man kneeling beside the child. License plate? Partial, GYX. Holloway exhaled. I want to know everything about that van. You think he's our guy? She looked toward the courtroom. I think Rex just made that decision for us. As they walked back toward the chamber, Natalie Wren pulled Holloway aside. We can't base a ruling on a dog's growl, she warned. We need actual evidence. I'm not making a ruling, Holloway said, but I am going to let the jury see it. You mean? I mean, if Emily signals again, and the dog reacts. Natalie swallowed hard. This could change everything. The doors reopened. The crowd shuffled back in. Emily walked to the stand again. Rex at her side. Lucas Braddock watched them both. And for the first time, there was a flicker of unease behind his eyes. 3 months earlier, the wind rustled the backyard trees. Spring sunlight flickered through the leaves. Emily Mason, 5 years old and full of color, twirled in her pink dress like she was dancing for the sky. Her laughter was a melody that made her mom smile from the kitchen window. Megan Mason poured a glass of lemonade. Her phone buzzed. Her sister's name flashed on the screen. Hey, Tina, she said, turning her back to the window. Yeah, everything's fine. Just watching Emily play. 4 minutes. That's all it took. When Megan stepped back to the window, her heart stopped. The gate was open. Emily was standing near the sidewalk, not alone. A man crouched beside her, smiling, talking. Megan couldn't hear him through the glass, but she could see Emily's stillness, and the black van parked at the curb. She dropped the glass. It shattered. Emily! The man's head snapped up. His smile vanished. He grabbed Emily's arm. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She just stared. Frozen. Across the street, Nancy Delgado, a retired teacher walking her Labrador, saw it unfold. Hey! She shouted. Get away from her! The man flinched. Emily yanked her arm free and bolted. Megan burst through the back door, sprinting barefoot across the yard, skidding on the grass as she caught her daughter mid-run. Emily buried her face in her mother's shoulder. The van roared. Tires screeched. It peeled away, disappearing around the corner. Megan clutched Emily, breathless, shaking. But Emily made no sound. Not a cry, not a word. Only silence. Police arrived fast. Sirens, flashing lights, detectives in suits. FBI agent Caleb Monroe knelt beside Megan on the porch. She won't talk, Megan whispered. She hasn't said anything. Emily sat in her lap. Blank, distant. Monroe's partner, Agent Riley Hart, reviewed the report. Same M.O., she muttered. Middle-class neighborhood, black van, lured with puppies. Same guy? Monroe asked. No prints, no cameras. Witness got part of a plate. GYX, something. Megan watched Emily pick at the hem of her dress. Her fingers trembled. Her lips moved silently, like she was trying to talk to someone only she could see. We've had 4 cases like this in 18 months, Hart said quietly. 3 kids vanished. 1 returned. Barely. Megan flinched. But she's still here, Monroe said. And that means she's the key. They tried everything. Therapists, art, music, storybooks. But Emily didn't speak. She didn't play. She didn't eat without prompting. She flinched at car doors and shadows and strangers. One night, after another screaming nightmare without a sound, Megan sat across from her husband Jake at the kitchen table. "She's disappearing," Megan whispered. Jake wiped his face. "The counselor said there's something called selective mutism, a trauma response. She needs help. She needs something." They didn't know it yet, but the answer was sleeping on an orthopedic bed in a rehab center across town. Rex, retired K9 unit, 9 years old, scars on his side and soul. He'd taken a blade protecting a hostage during a raid, saved a child, lost his mobility, deemed unfit, scheduled for euthanasia. Dr. Laura Banner said no. She ran the Hope Pause therapy program, rehabilitated dogs who still had fight left in them, matched them with children who needed someone who'd never ask them to speak. She saw Rex, and she saw what he could still be. When Megan brought Emily in, she didn't expect a miracle. Emily stood behind her, eyes wide, silent. Rex sat still, big, calm, watching. Dr. Banner knelt beside Emily. "This is Rex," she said. "He doesn't talk either, but he listens, all the time." Emily peeked out from behind her mother. Rex didn't move. Banner waited. "If you want to meet him, just put out your hand." Emily didn't move. Not at first. Then slowly her small hand reached forward. Rex didn't rush. He took one step, then another. He lowered his head until his nose touched her fingers. And Emily didn't pull away. She stepped closer. Her hand rested on his head. Megan choked on a breath. "She hasn't touched anyone since—" "I know," Banner said quietly. "Let it happen." In the days that followed, Emily changed. She still didn't speak, but she followed Rex everywhere, slept curled against him, drew pictures again, always with a dog by her side. She stopped shaking at strangers. She started humming. And then one afternoon, Megan caught her whispering. "Good boy." She breathed into Rex's ear. The words were soft, barely real, but they were hers. Rex had heard them. He lifted his head, eyes bright. Emily smiled for the first time in weeks. From that day on, they were inseparable. But Emily hadn't just found comfort. She'd found something else, a way to communicate. Dr. Banner taught her simple cues. Finger signals, pressure touches, ones Rex had been trained to recognize during his K9 service. Emily learned them fast. And when she pointed to a photo of Lucas Braddock on a police tablet, Rex had growled, not out of confusion, out of certainty. Banner reported it. So did Megan. Which is how they ended up in court. Judge Holloway had approved Rex's presence after a long debate. The defense had fought it, called it prejudicial, dramatic, unnecessary. But Holloway had watched the footage. She'd seen the girl point. She'd seen the dog's eyes change. And now the dog was back, sitting beside the child who hadn't spoken since the day she was almost taken. And the man on trial was the same one Rex had growled at from a photograph. Only now, he was real. And Rex hadn't forgotten. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, reporters lined the back wall. Cameras weren't allowed, but that didn't stop the buzz. The child witness, the therapy dog, the man accused of luring children with promises of puppies. Lucas Braddock sat at the defense table. Mid-40s, button-down shirt, clean-shaven, normal. Too normal. He didn't look like a monster. But when Emily entered, holding Rex's leash in one trembling hand, he looked up and froze. It was half a second, barely noticeable. But to Judge Holloway, it was enough. She'd seen that flicker before, recognition followed by calculation. Emily walked slowly, eyes low. Rex walked beside her, calm but alert, his gait measured. His ears twitched. His body stayed tight. As they reached the witness stand, Rex paused, looked at Braddock, his eyes locked, muscles tensed. A low growl rumbled from deep in his chest. Not loud, but undeniable. Judge Holloway's gavel hit the bench hard. 10-minute recess, she said sharply. Clear the courtroom. Whispers exploded. Reporters scribbled. Lawyers objected. Braddock didn't move. Emily clutched Rex tighter. In the hallway, Megan dropped to her knees beside her daughter. Honey? Are you okay? Emily didn't answer, but her face was pale, her hand clenched in Rex's fur like her life depended on it. Agent Monroe arrived seconds later. I was watching from the gallery, he said. That wasn't a coincidence. That dog recognized him. Rex was trained for scent memory, Dr. Banner added. He could be recalling a past encounter, and Emily gave a signal just before it happened. Judge Holloway emerged, robes flowing. Is this true? She asked Banner. Yes, we taught her hand cues. She used one to trigger Rex's alert behavior. The judge nodded slowly. Back inside the courtroom, Braddock's attorney, Susan Lane, leaned close. You okay? Braddock's voice was low. That dog. I didn't expect the dog. What are you talking about? Nothing. But his hands were sweating, and his eyes darted to the exit. Rex was a problem. Emily sat in a small side room, her sketchpad in her lap. She drew a stick figure, a van, a girl, a shadow, and a dog. Megan watched from the corner, hands twisting. She's telling us what happened, the only way she can. Agent Hart studied the drawing. That van looks like the make we flagged last month. Monroe leaned in. Run it again. This time cross-check with any vehicle Braddock ever owned, rented, or borrowed. Banner pointed to the figure beside the girl. Every drawing she makes has Rex in it, even the ones from before she met him. What does that mean? Megan asked. Banner's eyes narrowed. She might have seen Rex before, or a dog like him, possibly even during the incident, if Braddock had ties to the police, security, anything. Monroe's phone buzzed. Say that again, he barked into the receiver. He paused, then turned to them. Braddock's old company provided private security. They had a retired K9 unit on site for years. Guess what breed? Rex's ears twitched. German Shepherd. Back in court, Judge Holloway addressed the room. I've been briefed on the incident. The child's behavior, the dog's reaction, and the defendant's visible response are all now part of the record. Proceed. Lane stood, brushing invisible lint from her suit. Your Honor, this is all speculative. A child's drawing? A dog's growl? This isn't evidence. Holloway stared her down. Yet here we are. The prosecution called Monroe to the stand. He detailed the pattern. 5 attempted abductions, 3 children still missing, 2 recovered too late, 1 witness alive, Emily, and 1 name now surfacing in background checks. Lucas Braddock, connections to security companies, access to vehicles, discreet, untraceable tools. He's smart, Monroe said. He hides in plain sight. But the girl, she saw him, and the dog smelled him. Lane shook her head. Smelled him? Braddock wore cologne, Sandalwood-based. Unique. Rex was trained on scent differentiation. The moment the defendant entered the courtroom, Rex reacted. She laughed. This is courtroom theater, not Animal Planet. Then Emily entered again, Rex at her side. The room held its breath. Prosecutor Dana Weaver approached gently. Emily, I know you're brave just for being here. I won't ask you to speak. Just listen. Can you point to the man who was in your yard that day? Emily's hands stayed frozen. Then, slowly, she raised one finger and pointed, directly at Braddock. Rex growled. Louder this time. A ripple of tension ran through the gallery. Lane jumped to her feet. Objection. Pre-coached. Her mother... Judge Holloway held up a hand. I will allow it. Continue. Weaver nodded. Emily, do you remember what he said? No response. Weaver gently placed a sheet of paper in front of her. A simple checklist. Drawings of people, vans, dogs. Emily picked up the pencil. Circled one drawing. A black van. Then she reached over and traced the dog's ear. Rex didn't move. Braddock did. He flinched. Again. And that time, everyone saw it. In the defense room, Braddock paced. They're gonna figure it out. You're fine, Lane said, irritated. It's a therapy dog and a traumatized child. Nothing they've said would hold up. She knows. That dog knows. You're losing it. I need out of here. You're staying put. Braddock's eyes darkened, but he sat for now. That night, Monroe met with Judge Holloway in chambers. There's a cabin, upstate, tied to Braddock's old company. Soil matches what we found on his tires. We're getting a warrant. The judge rubbed her forehead. This is moving fast. It needs to. If there are more kids, we can't wait. She nodded. Do what you have to do, and bring that dog. Monroe looked at the photo of Rex sitting beside Emily. I wouldn't dream of going without him. The judge leaned back. Then God help us if she's right. Outside the window, the city lights flickered, and inside a quiet apartment, Emily Mason lay curled in bed. Rex lay beside her, watching the door, waiting. The tires crunched over gravel as Agent Monroe's SUV pulled into the woods. Thick trees surrounded them. The cabin sat quietly ahead, weathered and half sunken into the earth like it was hiding. It was remote. Too remote. Dispatch, this is Monroe. We've reached the location. Proceeding with caution. Rex jumped out the moment the door opened. His nose went straight to the ground. Tail stiff, ears locked forward. He smells something, Banner said. They followed him to the porch. Dust coated the steps. Old cobwebs clung to the railing, but the front lock was shiny. New. Someone's been here, Monroe muttered. Rex let out a low growl, pacing along the edge of the porch. He stopped at a warped board near the door and began pawing. Monroe knelt. A boot print. Fresh. Inside, the cabin creaked with every step. Empty beer cans, rusted tools, a cot covered in stained sheets. The air was heavy, like it hadn't moved in years. Rex froze in the doorway to the back room. His body stiffened. Then he barked. Once. Loud. Sharp. Banner pushed past. There, in the floor, a hidden trapdoor. Monroe's stomach dropped. He drew his weapon. We open it on 3. 1, 2, 3. The hatch creaked open. A narrow staircase spiraled into darkness. Rex didn't wait. He darted down, growling. Rex! Monroe shouted. They followed fast, flashlights cutting through the thick air. Then they saw her, curled in the far corner of the concrete basement. Small, pale, chained to a pipe. A girl, alive. Rex was already at her side, licking her face gently, whining. She stirred, eyes fluttered open. When she saw him, she whispered, voice broken, "Doggy." Monroe ran to her. "It's okay, sweetheart. We've got you." She couldn't have been more than 8. Dirty, shaking, but breathing. "My name's Emma," she whispered. "Are you real?" "You bet," he said, unlocking the chain. Rex lay beside her, his big body curled protectively around her tiny frame. Banner called it in. "We found her. Cabin in Barrow Creek. Still alive." They carried Emma out, wrapped in a thermal blanket. She clung to Rex the entire ride back. No one spoke much. Back at the hospital, Emma was cleaned up, checked out, and stabilized. But she refused to let go of Rex. "You can stay with me, right?" she asked softly. Banner smiled. "He's not going anywhere." Monroe pulled Banner aside. "We're running out of time. This links directly to Braddock." "DNA?" "Too early, but this location matches soil samples from his tires. Exact match." Banner's eyes narrowed. "Then we hit him with it." Next morning. Courtroom. Tension thick. Prosecutor Weaver stepped up. "Your Honor, we have urgent evidence. A child was rescued late last night, tied to this case." Braddock's jaw twitched. "Her name is Emma Collins, 8 years old, abducted 6 months ago, found in a cabin tied to the defendant." Lane stood, furious. "Objection! This is a stunt. There's no formal connection to my client." Judge Holloway didn't blink. "Prosecution may proceed, but I want confirmation. Soon." Weaver nodded. "You'll have it." In the hallway, Braddock cornered Lane. "They found the cabin?" "Yes." "Is she alive?" Lane hesitated. "Yes." Braddock cursed under his breath. Rex, waiting beside Emily, lifted his head. His ears went back. He growled. Low. Warning. Inside the courtroom, Emma was wheeled in, IV attached to her wrist, her parents at her side. She didn't speak. But when she saw Braddock, her lips trembled. Then she pointed. Holloway's gavel struck. "Enough." She looked at the jury. "You are now witnessing what monsters look like in daylight." Braddock's hands clenched. Sweat rolled down his temple. "Do you wish to change your plea?" the judge asked. Braddock said nothing, but his eyes drifted. To Rex, to Emily, to Emma. All three staring at him. He cracked. "Yes." The room gasped. Lane spun toward him. "What the hell are you doing?" "I'm guilty," Braddock said, voice barely above a whisper. "I did it." Rex barked once. The courtroom fell silent, then erupted. Reporters scrambled. Victims' families cried. Agents nodded grimly. Judge Holloway banged her gavel again. "Order." She looked at Braddock. "You just saved yourself a trial, but not your soul." He was taken away. Emily turned to Rex, buried her face in his fur. She whispered something no one else heard. But Rex did. His tail wagged once. Outside the courthouse, Monroe stood with Banner. "Think there are more kids?" Banner looked at the sky. "Always." Rex looked up and waited. Ready, Judge Holloway's chambers were quiet. Too quiet. Agent Monroe leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, jaw tight. Beside him, Prosecutor Weaver sifted through documents with shaking hands. "Braddock pled guilty," Monroe said flatly. "But something still doesn't add up." Weaver looked up. "Like what?" "He's not the type to fold. He didn't confess to everything. He confessed to Emma's kidnapping, sure. But what about the others?" Weaver frowned. You think he's covering for someone? I think he's afraid of someone. Across town, Emily sat at the kitchen table, crayon in hand, drawing in silence. Rex sat close beside her, eyes half-lidded but alert. Sarah Carter, Emily's mom, glanced over. What you working on, sweetheart? Emily held it up. A child's drawing of a van, a man's face, and a shadowy figure behind him. With red eyes. Sarah swallowed. That night, Monroe reviewed all the case files. There was something he was missing. He knew it. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated. Answered. A deep voice spoke. You're asking the wrong questions, Agent. Monroe straightened. Who is this? You want the truth? Start with Braddock's contracts. Follow the money. You've only scratched the surface. Click. Gone. He stared at the phone. Banner walked in, holding a folder. Autopsy report from the cabin? Monroe took it. Skimmed fast. Then stopped. Wait. This is wrong. What? He tapped the page. The floorboards had recent blood traces. Human, but not Emma's. Adult male. Banner's brow furrowed. You thinking someone else was down there? Or someone else died there? The next morning, Monroe and Banner arrived at the Federal Forensics Lab. They had one question. Was Braddock working alone? Rex came with them, his nose twitching constantly, tail straight behind him like a radar. Inside, Agent Sims met them at the lab door. We ran the blood against every record in the system. Got a hit. Monroe tensed. Who? Sims hesitated. David McCall, Braddock's old commanding officer. What? Reported dead 2 years ago in a car accident, but DNA doesn't lie. That was his blood in the basement. Monroe turned to Banner. This goes deeper. Meanwhile, back in the courthouse, Defense Attorney Lane sat in the interview room with Braddock. You're lucky you pled when you did, Lane said, cold. But now the feds are circling. You know that, right? Braddock leaned in. They think this is over? He smiled. They haven't even found the second basement. Lane froze. What second basement? Braddock just chuckled. Then said nothing. Rex across the city jolted up suddenly, his nose lifted, twitching. He whined softly. Emily looked up. Mom, she said. Sarah nearly dropped her mug. Honey, what did you say? Emily turned to Rex. Her fingers made the small motion. A silent cue. Rex stood, alert, ready. The doorbell rang. Sarah opened it. It was Monroe. We need to talk. They sat down in the living room. Emily curled next to Rex. There's another location, Monroe explained. We think Braddock wasn't working alone, maybe not even in charge. Sarah's face paled. But he confessed. He confessed to what we could prove. That's different than the truth. Monroe looked at Emily. She might know something. Sarah shook her head. She's barely spoken. Emily reached into her backpack, pulled out another drawing. Handed it to Monroe. It was a house. A red door. A symbol above it. Banner, looking over his shoulder, went still. That symbol. That's not just decoration. That's a paramilitary crest. One I've seen before. Where? Private contractors. Used to run dark ops in the Middle East. Monroe stood. Let's pay them a visit. Later that evening, they tracked the symbol to a property in northern Virginia. Hidden in woods. Remote. Guarded. Rex led the way. 1 bark. 2. The third was a growl. They breached. Inside, armed men scrambled. Monroe shouted, "Federal agents!" Shots fired. Chaos erupted. Rex darted between cover and chaos, herding civilians toward exits. Banner dragged a suspect to the floor. "Where's the second basement?" The man whimpered. "You don't want to go down there." Monroe grabbed his collar. "Try me." They found the hatch behind a false wall. Steel reinforced, took a battering ram and 15 minutes. Inside? Photographs, files, surveillance, children. Dozens, names, locations, dates. It wasn't just Braddock. It was a network. Back in the truck, Monroe stared at the pile of evidence. "Jesus." Banner didn't speak. Rex sat in the back seat, eyes on the horizon, waiting. Emily had known. She had drawn it. And Rex had led them. They weren't done yet, not even close. The air in the interrogation room was thick. Dim fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Braddock sat chained to the table, a smirk tugging at his lips. Agent Monroe paced in front of him. Calm, focused. "You like riddles, Braddock?" he asked. Braddock shrugged. "Only when there's a prize." Monroe tossed a photograph on the table. The red door, the crest, the second basement. "We found it." Braddock didn't flinch. "You think I'm scared?" he said, chuckling. "You're playing catch-up, Monroe. That door, that's just one." "One what?" Braddock leaned forward, voice low. "One of many." Monroe slammed his hand on the table. "Give me names. Locations. Now." Braddock just laughed. Back at HQ, Weaver and Banner reviewed the footage from the Virginia raid. Faces caught on camera. One stood out. Banner squinted. Pause. Zoom in. Weaver leaned closer. "Is that?" "Eli Mercer," Banner said. "Former CIA. Disappeared 5 years ago. Thought he was dead." "Not dead," Weaver said. "Running the show." Suddenly a knock on the office door. It was Judge Holloway. "We need to talk." Down in the judge's private chambers, the room was thick with tension. "I received a letter," Holloway said. "Anonymous. It warned me not to let Emily testify again." Monroe's eyes narrowed. "What did it say?" Holloway handed it over. One sentence, printed, not handwritten. "Silence the girl, or she disappears next." Sarah Carter sat in the hallway with Emily. Rex lay at her feet, unmoving, but his ears twitched at every sound. Sarah held her daughter close. Her voice shook. "I don't like this, sweetheart. We should be at home." Emily didn't respond, just held tightly to Rex's leash. Inside the war room, Weaver hit the whiteboard with a marker. "Eli Mercer, trained Braddock, recruited for covert ops, disappeared after a failed extraction mission in Syria." "Except now," Monroe said. "He's running a trafficking ring on U.S. soil." "And Braddock?" Banner asked. "A foot soldier, loyal to a fault. Mercer's the brain." Weaver turned to the screen. Pulled up satellite data. "There's a property near Lake Huron, former military training ground. It's been cold for years. But 2 days ago, heat signatures spiked." "Let me guess," Banner muttered. "The red door again?" Monroe nodded. "Let's bring the dog." An hour later, Rex jumped into the black SUV. Emily handed Monroe a drawing, her hand trembling. Another house. This time, a boat dock behind it, a shadow in the water. Monroe glanced down. "She sees what we miss." The team arrived at the lake house under the cover of dusk. Wind whipped across the water. Rex was out first, sniffing the air, tail stiff. Inside it was quiet. Too quiet. Banner pushed the door open. "Clear." They moved room to room. Then Monroe paused at the back wall. "Here." Banner found it too. A hollow spot. The same trick. Rex growled. They opened the false panel. Instead of stairs, a tunnel. A faint light flickered from deep inside. They followed. 15 feet in, they hit a steel door, welded shut. "Blow it!" Monroe ordered. A charge was set. Boom. Dust choked the air. Behind the blast, a room appeared, lit by a single swinging bulb. 2 cots. Chains. Files stacked neatly on a desk. In the corner, a laptop. Weaver rushed in, grabbed it, fired it up. Encrypted. "Can you crack it?" Monroe asked. Weaver was already typing. "Depends." But Rex wasn't focused on the desk. He turned, faced a metal locker on the far side of the room. He barked once, twice. Low growl. Banner moved fast, ripped the door open. Inside? A duffel bag, clothes, passport, cash, and a phone. Unlocked. A message glowed on the screen. "Phase 2 confirmed. Get the girl." Monroe cursed under his breath. "He's coming for Emily." They raced back toward the surface, but Monroe's phone buzzed before they reached the car. It was Sarah, panicked. "Emily's gone." Silence. Then a breath. "She was with Rex. They were playing in the backyard. I went inside for 2 minutes. Banner's voice was razor sharp. "Did anyone see anything?" Sarah's voice cracked. "There was a van. White. I didn't see plates. It was fast. Rex chased it, but—" Monroe clenched his fists. "They knew. They waited until we left." Back at the house, Sarah sat on the floor, sobbing. Rex's leash lay beside her. Empty. But just then the front door burst open. Rex charged in. Muddy. Bleeding from his paw. But in his mouth? Emily's pink scarf. And something else. A Jeep's tracker. Chewed, barely functioning. Monroe took it. "We're not done yet," he said, his voice low. Rex stood beside him, panting. Eyes locked. They were coming for her. But so was he. The Jeep's tracker was dying. Battery blinking red, signal weak. But it was enough. Monroe stared at the screen, jaw clenched. "Northern Ridge, old ranger station." Banner frowned. "That place has been shut for years. Not tonight." Monroe snapped. "They're holding her there. We move now." The SUV roared down the gravel road. Trees blurred past. Weaver worked in the back seat, decrypting the phone Rex found. "It's Mercer," she said. "He's orchestrating the whole thing. Braddock, the cabin, everything. He's been building a network for years." "Why Emily?" Banner asked. Weaver glanced up. She remembered him. She was only 5. She saw something. Something he thought was buried. Monroe's hands tightened on the wheel. "She's the key. That's why they need her gone." 30 minutes later, they reached the ranger station. It loomed in the moonlight. Dark windows, boarded doors. But a light flickered inside. Monroe cut the engine. Rex leapt out before the door was fully open, nose to the ground, growling low. "We go in quiet," Monroe ordered. They split. Banner around back, Weaver covering the east wall. Monroe took the front with Rex. Door creaked open. Darkness swallowed them. Inside, dust choked the air. Papers scattered, furniture overturned, the scent of oil and blood mixed. Rex froze, then bolted. Straight down the hallway. Monroe followed. They found her in the basement. Emily, hands bound, gagged, eyes wild. Beside her, a figure crouched in the shadows. Mercer, older, grayer, but the cold eyes hadn't changed. He smiled. "I was wondering when the mutt would find me." "Let her go," Monroe said, weapon raised. Mercer stood slowly. No fear. She's seen too much. You think a jury would believe a child? Rex growled, deep and low. Funny thing about dogs, Mercer said, stepping forward. They remember scent better than any human ever could. You're done, Monroe growled. We have your files, your network. It's over. Mercer chuckled. No, it's only just started. He reached into his coat, but Rex was faster. He launched, teeth bared, took Mercer down before he could draw. Gun skidded across the floor. Monroe ran to Emily. Untied her, pulled the gag. She didn't cry. She just grabbed Rex, clung to him like life itself. Banner burst in seconds later. All clear, Weaver's voice echoed from upstairs. They left in a rush. Hard drive still warm. Monroe hauled Mercer to his feet. Bloody, winded, but smiling. You don't get it, Mercer whispered. You think I'm the monster? I was trying to fix what this country broke. You abducted children. I saved them from worse, Rex snarled. Mercer shut up. Outside, agents loaded him into a transport. Emily sat wrapped in a blanket beside Rex. Sarah arrived minutes later, eyes wide, voice breaking. Emily! Mother and daughter crashed into each other. Tears, relief, silence. Then Emily pulled back, looked up. Rex saved me, she said, voice hoarse. Everyone froze. Her first full sentence in months. Sarah wept harder, hugging her tighter. Later, as dawn broke over the hills, Monroe sat beside Rex on the station steps. You're a damn hero, he said, patting his head. Rex leaned into him, still, watchful. Back at HQ, Braddock saw the news on the mounted TV. Mercer arrested in child trafficking sting. He laughed, low and bitter. You think that ends it? He whispered. There's more. The guard glanced at him. Braddock just smiled. It's not over. But for now, Emily was safe, thanks to the one soul who never stopped believing her. Rex. The courtroom was full again. Word had spread. Emily Carter was back. But this time, she wasn't just the little girl who couldn't speak. She was the girl who survived, the girl who remembered, and the girl who had a dog that never gave up on her. Judge Raymond Clark entered, robes flowing. His sharp eyes scanned the room. He saw Emily, he saw Rex, and he saw Braddock. Braddock didn't flinch, didn't blink. His smirk stayed in place. But his lawyer, Allison Crane, looked uneasy. Clark nodded to the bailiff. Let's proceed. Jenna Whitman, lead prosecutor, stood. Her voice cut through the silence. Your Honor, we request the testimony of Emily Carter be resumed. We also request the court allow Rex to remain beside her. Crane rose. Objection. The dog is an emotional crutch. His presence unfairly influences the jury. Judge Clark didn't hesitate. Objection overruled. The court recognizes Rex as a service animal. His presence is essential to the witness's ability to participate. Emily walked up to the stand, Rex beside her. Calm, ready. Sarah gave her daughter a nod of encouragement from the front row. Emily sat, took a deep breath. Rex laid at her feet, eyes fixed on Braddock. Jenna approached slowly. Emily, I want you to take your time. Do you remember the man who tried to take you? Emily didn't speak right away. She looked at Rex. Then she raised her hand and pointed, directly at Braddock. Gasps spread through the room. Braddock's jaw tightened. His smirk faded. Jenna leaned in. Do you remember what he said to you? Emily's lips parted. He said he had a puppy in his van. He wanted me to see it. And then? I didn't want to go, but he grabbed me. The courtroom went still. And what happened next? Jenna asked gently. I froze, Emily whispered. I couldn't scream, but I remembered the signal. She held up 2 fingers, tapped her leg. Rex's ears twitched. The signal. He came, she said, smiling at Rex. He always comes. Braddock shifted in his seat. Jenna turned to the judge. We also have forensic evidence. The jacket Emily wore had trace skin cells. DNA. A partial match to the defendant. Crane stood. Circumstantial. Unreliable. That jacket was handled by dozens of people. Jenna didn't back down. There's more. She nodded to the side door. FBI agent Monroe stepped in, holding a file. Your Honor, this is Special Agent Jack Monroe. His team uncovered hard drives hidden at the Northern Ridge cabin. Inside were recordings, surveillance footage, including one that shows Braddock meeting with Mercer, days before the abduction attempt. Crane's face dropped. Braddock's hand slammed the table. Clark pounded his gavel. Order! Monroe handed the file to the judge. This footage directly links Braddock to Mercer's child trafficking network. Gasps again. Reporters scribbled like mad. Crane looked cornered. Jenna turned to Braddock. You trafficked children, and when one girl survived, you tried to erase her, but you didn't count on Rex. Braddock stood. You don't understand what this is. We were fixing the system, getting to the ones who slip through the cracks. Rex growled. Braddock glared at the dog. That thing. That mutt. You let a dog dictate justice? Judge Clark stood. Enough. The jury will decide. But from where I sit, justice walked into this courtroom on 4 legs. Outside, cameras flashed as Braddock was led away in cuffs. Inside, Emily sat quietly, stroking Rex's head. He licked her hand. She smiled. Jenna approached. You did great, Emily. The girl nodded. Rex did better. In the hallway, Monroe joined Sarah. Braddock will fall. And Mercer, too. We're going after the rest of them. The whole ring. Sarah looked down at Emily. My daughter's not afraid anymore. She had help. Monroe said. Rex barked once, like he knew. And maybe he did. Later that night, in a quiet living room lit only by a nightlight, Emily curled up beside Rex. Her head rested on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. Good boy, she whispered. Rex blinked and closed his eyes. He had done his job, but he would never stop watching. The news broke before sunrise. A second child had been found. Alive. A girl named Lila Jensen, missing for over a year, rescued from a locked trailer on a remote property registered under a shell company tied to Braddock. She was weak, malnourished, but conscious. And she spoke one name. Rex. No one understood it. She had never met him, but she'd seen a dog like him. The same scar, the same eyes, on a screen. A warning her captor once gave her. You scream, the dog comes. That lie saved her life. The FBI traced back more properties. Monroe's task force was stretched thin, but energized. A trafficking network was being dismantled piece by piece. Braddock had opened a floodgate. In the federal building, Jenna Whitman stared at the evidence boards. Maps, timelines, photos of children now coming home. Clark stepped in, coffee in hand, his tone quiet. We just got confirmation. Braddock's lawyer is filing a deal. Jenna turned. A deal? He's naming names. What's the ask? Protect his sister. She runs a non-profit. Says she had no idea. She didn't. Monroe's voice came from behind. I checked. She runs a shelter. Legit. Nothing dirty. He's just trying to spare what's left of his bloodline. Jenna exhaled. Let him talk. But he doesn't walk. Agreed. Clark nodded. The room went quiet as Monroe pulled a thumb drive from his pocket. You need to see this. He plugged it into the projector. Static. Then grainy footage. A warehouse. Concrete floors. A metal table. Tied to it. Emily. Younger. The footage was from before the abduction attempt. A test run. They were watching her long before the day at the park. Jenna's stomach turned. That son of a... The next clip showed a figure off camera. Keep her quiet, the voice said. And then, the twist. Another voice answered. Familiar. Flat. Calculated. I will. Monroe paused the video. Looked to Jenna. That voice. You know it, don't you? She nodded slowly. Crane. Braddock's defense attorney. No one saw it coming. She'd played the system, gained Braddock's trust, then inserted herself into his defense team, not to protect him, but to protect the network. Clark stood frozen. She embedded herself. She's been feeding intel, watching what we build, Monroe said. But now we've got her. Later that day, Crane entered the courtroom, flanked by U.S. Marshals. Calm, collected, like she didn't just see her world collapse. Braddock refused to look at her. You used me, he muttered. Crane smiled. So did you. Clark ordered her removed. The trial resumed. But everything had changed. The jury had seen too much, heard too much. Braddock stood to deliver a statement, not as a confession, not as a plea, but something else. My entire life, I believed I could fix broken things. He began. I chose children because they were the only ones who listened. Gasps. I never hurt them. Not directly. I placed them. With people who could. I built something, and I thought I was the only one who could keep it from spiraling. But I was wrong. He looked at Emily. At first I thought you were weak, a silent girl, easy to erase. But you weren't alone. He glanced at Rex. That dog, he wasn't trained to expose me, but he did. Because some things you can't train. Loyalty, instinct, that's what beat me. Rex didn't blink, just watched. Braddock returned to his seat. The courtroom held its breath. Jenna stood. No further witnesses, Your Honor. Judge Clark nodded. We proceed to closing statements tomorrow. Outside, the city buzzed. Inside the courthouse, Emily sat on a bench with Rex's head resting on her lap. She stroked the fur between his ears. I wasn't brave, she whispered. Sarah sat beside her. Yes, you were. I was just... scared. And you still showed up. That's bravery, honey. Emily looked down. Do you think I helped? Rex licked her hand. Sarah smiled. You helped more than anyone knows. Back in his office, Monroe lit a cigar he didn't plan to finish. They always miss one thing, he said, staring out the window. Jenna looked up. What's that? They think they're smarter than the dog. Rex, even miles away, lifted his head, like he heard him. The courtroom fell into stillness. Judge Alan Clark returned to the bench, his expression unreadable. Every eye followed him. Every breath held. He cleared his throat. Having reviewed the evidence and testimony, this court accepts the plea agreement. gasps. Defendant Alexander Braddock is hereby sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Braddock didn't react. He stared forward, silent, as if the reality hadn't sunk in. But it had. Crane's betrayal. His empire gone. His control shattered by a girl and her dog. Clark continued. Furthermore, the Department of Justice will pursue all individuals named in the defendant's sworn statement. The gavel came down. It was over. The reporters rushed out first. Cameras clicking. Microphones jostling. But the only story that mattered was in the second row. Emily sat quietly between her parents, her hand resting on Rex's back. She didn't smile, didn't cry. She simply watched Braddock as he was led away. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. Outside the courthouse, the air buzzed. TV crews, officers, onlookers. But in a quiet side corridor, Monroe found Jenna, Clark, and Rex. "Well," Monroe muttered, "we closed it." "No," Jenna said softly. "She did." They turned to see Emily walking toward them. She stopped in front of Rex. He stood and leaned in, resting his head gently against her shoulder. She pressed her forehead to his. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was clear, strong. Sarah gasped behind her. David clutched her hand. It was the first time she'd spoken in public since the attack. Monroe's eyes flicked to Jenna. "You hear that?" "I did." He knelt beside Rex. "You're something else. You know that?" Rex wagged his tail once. Calm, proud. Jenna stepped forward, pulling a small medallion from her pocket. The same medal given to retired canines. Honorary service. Lifetime protection. She clipped it to Rex's collar. "You saved her life, then helped save more." Rex looked up at her, his eyes steady. "You're a damn hero." Later that week, a public ceremony was held on the courthouse lawn, not for Braddock, not for the agents. For Rex. Children he'd never met brought drawings. A local bakery donated treats, dog biscuits shaped like shields. Veterans saluted him. Emily stood with Monroe as the mayor handed Rex an engraved tag. Rex, Guardian of Justice. Reporters snapped photos, but Emily held the leash steady, shielding him from the crowd. "This is his last case," she said. Monroe raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "We're taking him home." Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "He's family now." And so he was. Weeks passed. The story spread across the country. Talk shows, podcasts, even late-night comedians. German Shepherd gets secret signal, cracks national child trafficking ring. One headline read. But for those who knew, it wasn't just a headline. It was real. Emily went back to school. Slowly. Quietly. Some days were hard. Some nights harder. But Rex never left her side. He lay beside her during storms, sat at her feet during class presentations, waited outside therapy sessions. She still didn't speak much, but when she did, she always spoke to Rex first. One rainy Sunday afternoon, Monroe visited their home, just to check in. Emily opened the door herself. "Agent Monroe," she said, surprising him. "You remember me?" "Of course." He smiled. "How's our hero?" Emily turned. Rex lay near the window, watching birds flicker past. "He's happy," she said, "and tired. He's earned it." Monroe hesitated, then asked, "Do you ever miss the courtroom?" Emily thought for a moment. "No." She looked back at Rex. I miss the way people looked at him. Like they believed again. Monroe swallowed hard. You gave them that. She smiled, faint but real. Rex did. He nodded. Yeah, he did. As he turned to leave, Emily called out. Agent Monroe? Yeah? If people don't believe in good things anymore, how will they ever fight bad ones? He blinked, then smiled. That's why we tell stories, kid. So they told it, over and over, to everyone who'd listen. The story of a little girl, a courtroom, and a German shepherd who knew exactly when to act. Because heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they walk on 4 legs, with eyes that see what others miss, and hearts that never give up. What's your story with a loyal dog? Share it in the comments. And don't forget to support our German Shepherd channel, because stories like this deserve to live on.